Call to order this regular meeting of the City Council. Roll call, please.
Mayor Brinkman.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Stallman.
Here.
Councilmember Beckman.
Here.
Councilmember Cernanik.
Present.
Councilmember Cole.
Here.
Councilmember Taylor.
Present.
Councilmember Valdez.
Present.
Will you rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That works better. Know how it is? Okay, are there any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, the minutes from June 5th regular meeting, are there any changes to those? Seeing none, those are approved as submitted. City Manager, do you have a report?
I do, Mayor. Thank you. All right, getting settled here. A couple quick things. Just letting council know we are getting knee-deep into the 2013 budget process, so the spreadsheets have gone out to the departments, and they're due back, I think, in about a week. So we're working fast and furious on that. In the Economic Development Department arena, we are looking for, we posted for the position, and we had either 60 or 80 candidates, and we've narrowed that down to 9, and we'll be doing interviews next week. And my hope is to get somebody on board by middle or late August, depending upon whether they're in-state, out-of-state, et cetera. So the majority were actually out-of-state. We're continuing to update the website and talk about it as it relates to marketing and what the role of Littleton is in the marketing world. So Kelly Nardi and I are working on that. We're continuing. I know the mayor mentioned last time we've got July 24th scheduled for our Economic Development Symposium, and we do have Mayor Hancock confirmed, Tom Clark from Metro Denver Economic Corporation, and Dr. Phyllis Resnick from DU, who will be speaking that evening, so stay tuned for more information to come on that. I want to let the council know that we are making some changes to the Littleton report and how we handle the Littleton economic news. And one of the things that we are doing is we're using the space, especially in the Littleton report, for more business information as opposed to the ribbon-cutting pictures that are out there. And the purpose of that is that the Littleton report is still paper, it's being mailed, there's costs associated, and we really thought if we're here trying to help the businesses, we want to use that space much more around helping the business, talking about the business information, maybe a picture of the business location so that people can find it, but talk more about the services and products that that business either sells or offers for it, and less about the actual picture of a ribbon cut or everyone smiling. We certainly can, if we're invited to those, the council can attend, and we can assist in getting them a nice 8.5 by 11, and they can frame it on their wall if that's what they want to do. But from our role, we really want to support the business and get the information out. We're mailing that Littleton report to everyone in the city. So working on that. The Humane Society, just wanted to update you guys on that. We have sent out a draft MOU. You recall that the mayor had called together, I believe it was about 10 municipalities, and had that meeting, and one of the outcomes of that was a directive to a member of the Centennial staff and myself to draft an MOU. And so that MOU is now out to the mayors and managers of all those jurisdictions that participated, and including Greenwood Village, Mayor. And we are awaiting edits on that. So that is slowly but surely moving forward. And lastly, on the Littleton Inglewood wastewater treatment plant, I know there was a lot of conversation during the Colorado Municipal League conference about other alternatives and different conversations that were occurring. We had our supervisors meeting last week, and I have asked, and Gary Sears from the Inglewood manager have asked Brown and Caldwell, I believe, certainly the staff, to draft up the legal folks, to draft up a white paper specifically on nutrient trading. because I think there's some information before we go too far down that road that it's important for the council to have before we have a discussion on that kind of off the cuff. So that's occurring, and when I have a final of that, I will obviously distribute it to the council, and you can decide what action, if any, you want to take from that. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
On the change with the ribbon cuttings, can we, after we've tried what you're saying, can we solicit feedback? I've gotten lots and lots of very positive feedback from people about council being in at the ribbon cuttings as a statement of our support of business, as a visual to the residents of our support for business.
And this is not about your participation in that. This is about using the Littleton report and this limited space we have in that.
No. I know. I understood
Okay,
what you said.
sorry.
I'm just saying that the feedback from people who see us there in the Littleton report at business openings, at the ribbon cuttings, what I've been hearing is that they really see that as a very strong council statement of support for business.
Well,
so
let's give it a shot,
may,
and then we can do some debrief, because I would counter with that the purpose of that is not about council or the government. It's about getting the information out about the business and making sure that our community knows that a new business is opening. And so that actually would reaffirm my personal belief that we need to be talking more about the business and getting the information out. And if there's something about, a general statement we want to make, maybe we could have the mayor write a kind of, an opening from the mayor paragraph that covers, hey, I'm pleased to announce that the following 6 businesses have opened in the community, and the council is supportive and appreciative that they've chosen Littleton, et cetera, et cetera. But, yeah, it's a
nice
work in progress.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Thank you.
We'll keep an eye out for it. Thank you.
City Manager, one comment on that. In the description, you might also include some aspect as to how the city may have worked with the business on the business planning or market opportunity identification, and include that.
We can certainly do that, because we do want to sell our economic development side. So thanks for that.
City Attorney?
I don't have anything.
Councilmember Beckman.
I do have a couple things I want to mention. I'm a member of the Highline Canal Working Group, and the intent of the group is to take a look at the Highline Canal, which goes for many miles to the Denver metro area, but particularly through Arapahoe County, and find the best way to apply Arapahoe County open space money to the opportunity that is there in the Highline Canal to create a linear park that goes completely through our city and on through other cities up into eventually into Denver. The Highline Canal Working Group, to that end, has commissioned a study, and the study is the first study of its kind to literally foot by foot make determination about what the condition of the canal trail is and what the vegetation condition is alongside of it. The Highline Canal Working Group is working on improving the trail and the vegetation. The canal itself will always belong to Denver Water Board, but as far as being a recreational opportunity, it's the path. So the first presentation was made on June 27th at the South Suburban Parks meeting of what this study is and how detailed that it is. There will be other opportunities to see this study, and it's going to be placed on the Arapahoe County Open Space website. So if you have an interest in that kind of thing, as soon as it's on that website, it may be there now, I'm not sure. You may want to look at that, because there's great plans for making that Highline Canal a legacy similar to what's been done along the South Platte. The other thing I want to mention, and we may talk about it again, is the governor's executive order and to not do fireworks in the state. I just want to comment that I have a good friend who has been very much involved in what happened in Colorado Springs, and I spent 2 different meetings with the mayor of Fort Collins. It is hard to understand the devastation that occurs when a fire like that hits. The understanding of the people that have worked them is that the state is so dry that live growing trees act like dead trees because they're that lacking of water than the humidity, low humidity. So it's a very dangerous situation. And the other issue is we just don't have the fire resources. They've been expended throughout the state. So as someone who spent a life looking at those kinds of issues, I really do want to commend the governor for making that stand, and then the sheriff of Arapahoe County for making the stand that in Arapahoe County, as he was authorized to do by the executive order, it's just too darn dangerous to be able to do the fireworks. So I ask your support to that. Please celebrate the 4th of July. It's a very important part of our tradition. It's a great family opportunity. We just won't be able to do the fireworks.
Thank you. Bill?
Thank you, Mayor. In addition to the Highline Canal Working Group public hearing that was held on the 27th, if you're looking for some of that language, I think the study's actually referred to as the Preservation and Enhancement Planning Study. So you guys certainly managed to use some big words around that. So
It's a consultant.
yep. To underline what Bruce has mentioned, and one of the things that is actually going to be impacting Littleton this summer is that Denver Water has provided notice that there will not be any water going through the canal, or at least flushed into the canal, other than what rainwater might be, and it means that there's going to be no new water at Kettering Lake as well. So. As far as South Suburban Park and Recreation is concerned, this month of July is the National Parks and Recreation Month, and one of the things as far as family activities that they are encouraging folks to get out and participate in is a series of fun runs. They're every Saturday during the month of July, so the 7th, 14th, 21st, and the 28th. The one on Saturday, the 28th, is down at Writers Vista Park, so it's right here in Littleton, so it's across the district. It starts at 8 a.m., and for $30 you get a tech shirt and an opportunity to participate. They will have some drawings that go along with it. The week before that, on Saturday, July 21st, I'm having a District 3 Town Hall meeting. It'll be at 10 o'clock at the South Metro Denver Realtors Association. Coffee, pastry, and the city manager will be provided.
On a platter.
And with the South Metro Denver Realtor Association, did want to extend congratulations to Ron Goldstein, who's been an executive director there, and I've worked with Ron, and he's actually taken retirement. In addition, we will be talking about some aspects of Inspire Littleton and TBD Colorado, as well as the MetroVision 2040 of Dr. Cog. And one item as far as the South Metro Denver Chamber of Commerce, they have gone through a rebranding. Councilmember Beckman was kind enough to bring some of the visuals for us. The theme and the branding that they're using is remarkable relationships and thriving community. So they have a little bit of a cleaner logo, but it's one of those things which is really stressing the relationships, and that a lot gets done in the South Metro area, not just with any one group, but actually in a collaboration across. And so it's not just with businesses, but in connection with businesses as well. Thank you.
Jerry?
Great. A couple things. It's good to be back. See you all again. It's been a while, about a month at least. And on the fireworks thing, I mean, that's great. I think Bruce stated that well, and I think the city put out a good communication on that with respect to the firefighters. With that in mind, the Denver Outlaws will have fireworks tomorrow night after their game. The game's at 7 o'clock at Mile High, so there will be fireworks there, as well as about 30,000 people. At the Littleton Housing Authority has its next meeting next week, July 12th. That seems to spark a little of interest for some folks at times. So the meeting is at 6:30, and that is at 5745 South Bannock, or there by Kmart, just west of Kmart. And last but not least, maybe at some time, Mr. Penny, if we can get an update maybe on the Kittering and Stearns, some of the issues going on over there. I know there's been some information put out on Kittering and a little bit on Stearns, but if we could get something maybe out on the TV, that would be cool. Thank you.
Jerry, just a question. The Littleton Housing Authority has gone through a name change. Do you have anything on the rationale behind that?
doing business as, what is it, the South Metro Housing Options, I think it is. It's other authorities have changed their names. The word authority just has a stigma to it that is not necessarily always pleasant to folks. Sometimes you just change. It's a business decision that they made. So they decided to go with a more friendly sounding name. Also, the housing authority has changed from what it used to do. It isn't just providing housing. It is now providing options for people that will help them to stay in their homes, such as rehabs, and also low-interest loans for other folks that qualify. So it's more than just a housing authority at this point. So it's very appropriate that they would change their name. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry.
You're welcome.
Bruce?
Thank you. I attended the Highline Canal item session with Councilmember Beckman as well, and will echo what he said. Really, quite an outstanding presentation in terms of how they're assessing the value of the assets and how they're putting a plan together to move forward into the next decades to preserve that particular asset, which is a huge jewel as far as the South Metro area is concerned. On the 28th of June, let's see, I attended, and Councilmember Beckman was there as well, the South Metro Chamber Commercial Real Estate session. Phil would have been, but was out of pocket, but that's okay.
Off continent.
Just in a very general sense, they spent a lot of time, they had a panel discussion talking about retail occupancy, commercial occupancy, rents, vacancy, so forth and so on throughout the whole South Metro area. It applies to us in as much as we're part of the overall macro market. But what they basically suggested was that we're roughly seeing the tail end of a 5-year cycle, and that the indicators we're getting now with commercial real estate trends basically represent some lagging indicators. Lots of mixed signals in the general economy. They said it wasn't as bright or as gloomy as TV would lead you to believe, but San Francisco, Seattle, and Denver are the biggest economic growth areas in the western U.S. Vacancy rates generally are dropping, lease rates are rising, but rents are nowhere near what's referred to as replacement cost. There's some retail expansion. Target, Walmart, for example, the new neighborhood Walmart market that opened last week over at Federal and Bowles and Lowell. But other stores such as Great Indoors are seeing some closings, so vacancy rates tend to bounce around. They expect a relatively slow, steady climb back to an equilibrium level with reasonable fundamentals is the high-level takeaway. But there was plenty of detail that was actually rather interesting. That evening was the opening of the latest exhibit at the museum, and I'm going to mess up the name, Mapuche is a Indian artifact, South American, I don't know, tribal-oriented set of artifacts, but an excellent rendition, and more than one person suggested that it was literally Smithsonian quality, which, of course, is to be expected since we are a Smithsonian-affiliated museum. Lastly, I attended the Littleton School Board meeting on the 28th of June also. I won't go into gross detail on this other than to say they're adopting their budgets for the 2012-2013 school year. Their website, the school board website, will have copious amounts of detail. They did conclude a collective bargaining agreement between the school, and the LPS, and the Littleton Education Association that runs through from August of 2012 through July of 2015. The size of the overall school budget is sort of interesting. I really didn't, even having going to these meetings, it's nice when you see it on a piece of paper, but they spend collectively all funds in terms of general fund, bond redemption, capital projects, so forth and so on, about $215 million a year to run the school systems that essentially covers Littleton and Centennial. General fund revenues this year, the two largest components of the revenues that they have to deal with roughly $132 million worth, 61 million is from property taxes and about 62 is from the state. And that's down about $1 million from last year. And then they're spending about a little over $4 million of the 2010 mill levy override, one-time spending money, predominantly on the science curriculum and the language arts curriculum is about 2.5 of the 4. And then there's computers, writing technology, and standards implementation money as well. So that's important information from the standpoint of, I think, transparency in terms of where they're spending money that the taxpayers have voted to give them. And other than that, I think, yes, sir.
I have one question on this, on our museum, which doesn't charge for what reason again? Do we know the reason for that?
It comes with
I believe it's
Smithsonian.
been council policy.
So that's just a council policy?
And I think there's a fair amount
Part of the
of
Smithsonian.
work has gone into analysis of patronship, if that's an appropriate term, and what happens to that as you increase the rates. How do you handle Littleton residents and seniors? And we've got a lot of data and history. If you'd like an update on it, we can.
I guess what I'm
provide.
thinking with the new Colorado History Museum, Smithsonian, if I'm not mistaken, they charge. And I was wondering if that had any relationship to what we're doing.
No, but we certainly can.
Maybe some information later
Yeah,
on.
we'd be happy. Does all of council want some of that history?
I do, because I think there's been a presumption that the Smithsonian designation did have some effect on what you could charge for.
All right. I don't believe that's accurate, so we'll send it to the two of you and maybe set up a meeting
Excellent.
with the two of you.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thanks.
Well, how about sending it to all of us then, whatever you're going to share?
Happy to.
Thanks.
Jim?
Yes, some information about the CML conferences on the CML website. All the sessions are listed there, so people can pick up information that they want for whatever sessions they'd like to see. I did attend sessions on urban renewal and revitalization and redevelopment. I found those very interesting. Another session that I went to had to do with municipal judges, where they encouraged counselors to go visit the courtroom, although they admitted that when a boss walks into the room, atmosphere changes, and it's not quite normal. But they still said your best evaluation is to be able to go and visit a courtroom. John Fielder's presentation I thought was very interesting. I would like to propose that the Park Foundation have him present his program on GOCO projects within the state as a fundraiser. The Park Foundation is in need of money for doing just the operations that they go through, as well as running some of their projects and printing trail maps and that sort of thing. So I'd like to propose that they do that, and I'll be contacting them to do so. And I also would like to give a big thanks to the Littleton Fire Rescue. I found that the paramedics have a very good bedside manner. They get you to doing things you don't even realize that they're doing to you until after it's already been done. And so if you want to see the full thing, check out the city's website in Fire Ops 101. Dr. Cog report, we established policies for programming funds that have recently become available. We'll be allocating those funds in next month's meeting. We adopted the Regional Transit Demand Management Short-Range Plan for the next 2 years, and we waived the annual review of the fast track subject to specific conditions. So we'll get the 208 review in 2013 instead of 2012. That's it.
Peggy?
So, 6 of us attended the CML meeting, and the sessions, I thought, at least the ones I attended, were really rewarding. And I'm trusting that for many of those, we will be sharing suggestions for things that relate to the city. The Boards and Commissions Task Force got some good information, I think, in terms of a youth commission. So we're meeting, I think, again next Monday so we probably will discuss that. But sessions, I thought, were very, very good at CML. And Jim had a different perspective at fire ops than most of us, but that was really a rewarding experience, I think, for everybody. And very, very humbling when we see how well the fighters around the state are dealing with the many fires. But the one just, you can't comprehend what they do and how they do it unless you're in that darn gear and you're near that fire and that heat is there. And if you saw in the paper yesterday, I think it was, that the heat at some of these fires, the one I think in Waldo Canyon, was so intense that it started a fire on the inside of a windowsill from the intensity of the heat. And those of us who participated in that fire ops really appreciated, I think, that the power of fires, if we didn't already. Then on a more serious note in a different serious note for city manager, in our packets last week, for this week, the ones that we just got, there were minutes of the Planning Commission meeting, and so I read those. And near the end was something I didn't fully understand because the minutes are so condensed. So I watched the end of the Planning Commission meeting for about the last 15 minutes of it to understand what was being said. And several of the commissioners, I thought, raised some really important questions about the outreach process for the comp plan in terms of questions and the kinds of questions that are being asked at one outreach session, and then maybe being refined or a different set of questions in some way being asked at a subsequent outreach. So they're not necessarily getting all the same input from each of the outreach groups. And they did give some suggestions, so I'm hoping that staff will take those to heart.
We are indeed, and we're continuing to work with the Planning Commission on revising and continuing the outreach process.
Well, I mean,
yes.
I know we got good staff, but we have, I believe, also really super commissioners, so just wanted to give that request.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You know, Peggy, I think that's great about the fire guys. They are out there in the heat. I think it should be worth mentioning, too, that our police officers are wearing vests. They're out there walking around 100-degree heat in the middle of the day and with the possibility of being shot at, too. So I think for both our firefighters and our police officers, it's amazing what they do.
Yes, thank you for saying
that. Council, I have one item. The South Platte Working Group Part 2 had their first meeting last week, and one of the issues that came up was the Chatfield Reservoir relocation storage study and environmental impact study. And it's about a 544-page document. I have printed out the executive summary and read it. And a couple of members of the working group had also gone to the public outreach meeting in Parker. And what we concluded was that it doesn't appear as though there is any consideration, or at least they're not paying any attention to the downstream flow at this point, and that is certainly something that affects our community. The South Platte River this summer has just been, sadly, there hasn't been an ability to have any recreation on there. There's no fishing. It's actually algae bloomed. I don't think it's been over 100 CFS all summer, and so part of it is being in a drought, but also part of it is that there's some issues in terms of what the Army Corps of Engineers is doing. There's downstream water rights requests. There's a lot of things that can get mixed into all of this, but to add the incredible amount of capacity that they're looking at adding up there, it's going to change a lot of that. So the fact that we're not seeing a lot of recognition for the flow through out of the dam down through the city. It also greatly affects our sewer treatment facility. What we have to, the group has asked is that the folks from Urban Drainage and Flood Control District work with a group called Right Water, and they are water rights experts. They are water use experts, water storage experts. So they are going to present us a white paper on this issue, basically going to cull through the 544-page report, tell us what we want to know, what is important for us to know. And the group has agreed to draft a letter to the Army Corps of Engineers from the South Platte Working Group to ask them to please give some consideration to the needs of the downstream users, and also to give some flow considerations based on our needs for recreation and just basically a healthy river. The other part of that is a consideration is the South Platte Working Group 2. We're joined back together again to create activities and create a greater opportunity for usage along the river and more accessibility to the river. In addition to that, we have a $4 million restoration plan that the city and South Platte Park are working on to improve the health of the river. So all of this stuff is all part of what we're doing. There's millions of dollars involved. There's 3 municipalities minimum involved at this point, actually 4. And so the group is going to draft this letter, and as a member of the committee and mayor, I will be asked to sign this letter, and in doing so, I would be signing on behalf of the city and the council. So we will be getting a draft. You guys will email it to you, but I would like just a general show at this point, just a nod or a raise of your hand as to your support for what we're looking at doing here, because we're going to be moving pretty fast. We've got a deadline to get back to the Army Corps. Once that deadline's passed, it's over. They don't consider anything, and they don't want to hear another word. So unless there's some opposition or somebody has some input they'd like to share. Jim?
I'd just like to add on to that, Debbie. Somebody who lives right on the river, and sometimes the only flows coming downstream, because Chatfield's not releasing any water, is sewage. It's sewage it's the effluent from other sewage treatment plants upstream of us, and that's all the water that's coming down. And I can tell you the algae bloom is causing a stink along the river right now because there's not enough water coming downstream. So it's very critical, I think, to increase the allocation of Chatfield in order to get us a better water flow coming through our city and on downstream.
Bruce?
If I could add, too, at the CML conference, Councilman Stallman, the mayor, and myself, and maybe some others I missed, attended a couple sessions that talked about water quality in Colorado and federal mandates and a few other issues that relate to our river, our wastewater treatment plant. And I have to tell you, I walked away from those feeling like Littleton was all by itself, that the issues that we're facing are ones we're going to have to solve on our own, and that until we find a way legally to get others to support us. So, Debbie, I really do support that, the action of that, but I just wanted to add that this is a time for this community to really pay attention to what's happened to that river.
Absolutely. Does anybody have any opposition at this point to moving forward? Okay, so
The only opposition I would have is the friendliness of the Army Corps of Engineers and the way the federal government's willing to always change their schedule for us.
yeah.
That's just a
Okay,
side
we're
note.
talking about.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I get off track?
Yeah.
Okay.
Went into fantasy land. Okay, that's it for me. Okay, moving to citizen appearances. We do have a scheduled appearance. It's a presentation by our Littleton Police Department on the CALIA reaccreditations. Chief Coogan.
Good evening, Council. Tonight we would like to publicly acknowledge the acceptance of the CALIA Award for our reaccreditation. Littleton was originally accredited in 2006, and so this was our second reaccreditation. The members that came to look at the department were extremely impressed. As Councilman Beckman will tell you, it's a lot of work to get this. We are one of only 11 agencies in the state of Colorado that is accredited, which reduces our insurance costs and, of course, is a prestigious award. The group was extremely impressed by our training facility and the extension of the police department and the remodel and what we had done in the property bureau. And they told us that it was the second nicest they'd ever seen anywhere. So I wanted the first, but we didn't get
How do
that.
we get?
Yeah, somebody in California had that.
Yeah,
so.
of course.
But we are extremely happy about this and proud to have that. And so here's our award.
Congratulations.
And I can read what it says, the acronym, but maybe you could, for the audience at home and in behind you.
Oh, okay.
CLIA is?
The Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies.
Thank you.
Didn't want to get it wrong.
Don't blame me.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Could I make a comment, Mayor?
Sure.
This community is so lucky to have the police department that it has, and that they've worked so hard since really the year 2000 to become accredited. It is not an easy task to be an accredited law enforcement agency. And one of the reasons why it is so difficult is not many agencies are willing to open their doors and show everything that they do to some tough inspectors who come in and are really looking to see how you really do business. And Chief Coogan, thank you for opening the doors to the police department. It truly is transparent. The CALEA assessment shows that, and we're operating at a level that is at the highest standards internationally in law enforcement.
And you add to that the 500 and some odd standards they've got to meet in order to get that certification.
So, Chief, stay put.
Yes.
Guest citizens. Presentation of Citizens Appreciation Awards by Chief Coogan. Chief?
We have actually to 3 people awards this evening. And before I give these, I just wanted to comment. We have a challenge coin. We have a tradition in the Littleton Police Department that when a citizen does something that's above and beyond the normal, that they step in, that they help a victim, that they step up as a witness, that we want to present them with our challenge coin. So we've asked these 3 people to come here tonight, 2 different events, so we could acknowledge what they did because they really stepped up for the community at another level. And that they would take this coin and carry it and share it with their friends as a proud part of our department. So if I could have you step down here. So let's start with Rudy Cisneros and Christina Slinkard. I'm just going to go ahead and read this and tell you about this. On June 10th, 2012, officers of the Littleton Police Department responded to a bank robbery at 5734 South Prince Street, the Chase Bank. When officers arrived on scene, they learned that a male suspect fled the bank and was last seen running south from that location. Officers searched the area but were unable to identify the suspect. Detectives obtained surveillance photos of the suspect and disseminated them to the media. The following day, detectives were contacted by Ms. Christina Slinkard and Mr. Rudy Cisneros, who both provided instrumental information to the investigation. The suspect was identified and taken into custody within 48 hours of the robbery. So we'd like to thank you for your participation in this. Little picture here. Wait for me. Thank you. Thank you very much. And we have one more. Mr. Stormy, and I'm going to get this wrong, Bradshaw McMinn? Oh, Mrs. I'm sorry. I was wondering about that name. Okay, we will fix this. Okay. On June 10th, 2012, officers of the Littleton Police Department responded to 1009 West Littleton Boulevard on a 911 call on an assault and attempted robbery that had just occurred involving 2 suspects. When officers arrived on scene, they located the store clerk who was seriously injured during the attack. One of the suspects was also injured and found inside the store. However, the second suspect had fled the scene. Detectives were trying to identify the fleeing suspect when Miss Stormy Bradshaw McMinn came forward with information. Ms. McMinn's assistance with this investigation was invaluable. Detectives were able to identify the second suspect and take him into custody without any further delay. So thank you very much. And I'd just like to say how important it is. These types of things, at this particular robbery, the victim was stabbed in the heart. It was a very serious scene. He did survive, and we really appreciate it when people come forward and assist us so that we can solve these crimes. So thank you. There you go.
Okay, now this is the time for unscheduled public appearances. Anybody who wishes to come down and address the council on any question regarding city services, policies, or other matters of community concern are welcome. We do have a public hearing this evening, so if you want to speak to that public hearing, we ask that you hold your comments until that point in the agenda. Cal?
Good evening. Last time I was here, I wasn't wearing glasses. So now I have to wear glasses. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council, City members, and fellow citizens. My name is Cal Murup, Centennial Vacuum, 6323 South Santa Fe Drive, Lowellton 80120. Honorable City Council, this letter was written on 6/18. On June 9th, 2012, the City of Lowellton, in cooperation with the Lowellton Historic Downtown Merchant Association, led by no other than our hardworking Merchant Association and its president, Mr. Greg Ranke, put on a great block party event on Main Street that attracted, per unofficial estimate, 140,000 guests of all ages and ethnicity. This event had something for every age group. There was kids face painting, magicians, vintage cars, two fireworks displays that awed the audience or the crowds. Refreshments for both old and young, and a taste of Lowellton best restaurants offering their own flair of little bites to tease the guests and bring them in for more. That evening, I volunteered to serve refreshments. And from 6 till 10 p.m., I observed that people were having fun, big smiles were abundant, everywhere people were orderly, and the streets were clean. What a wonderful weather it was for a great event for all. I'm here tonight to thank you, City Council, city officials, and all city employees, as well as all the vendors and the merchants that volunteered and contributed to make this event a success. I believe that having these events help keep Lowellton on everybody's mind. Lowellton is the city where you can feel safe to live, to work, to play, and meet great down-to-earth people that extremely care for the success and safety of their community by making it a fun and better place to call home, as I discovered 34 years ago. The influx of all the new faces, from families to young and old, and all the faithful longtime supporters that helped make this event a success, I thank you all. That's why this is proof that more of this happy, friendly, warm downtown hospitality are needed. Events are needed, sorry. So as of tonight, I want you all to know, I want to be a permanent paying member for all the events that take place on Main Street. Thank you. If you have any question, go ahead.
Thank you, Cal.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Yes, come on down.
Good evening, council and staff and everyone else. I've got a little handout, so I'm going to come and pass it out, and I'll be back.
You can give it to the city clerk.
Thank you.
I'm here tonight to let you know about
Give your name and address,
Sorry,
please.
Pam Chadbourne, and I live at Crestline in Nevada, across from the Essex House, and kind of the north corner of the football in downtown Littleton. And my interest, as probably everybody knows, is street lights downtown. The Acorn Luminaire, I feel, is not suited for spreading in downtown Littleton. And it's a very old light. It is not the light of the future. And so I'm going to point out to you that there's a documentary on Thursday night on PBS at 10 p.m. It's called The City Dark. I haven't seen it. It's made by a filmmaker, and I'm not sure it's going to address all the technical, engineering, political, and governance issues about street lighting. But it certainly says it's going to address some of the personal and health and aesthetic and scientific impacts of bad lighting in cities. So I feel it's extremely relevant because somewhere along the way, these Acorn luminaires are going to go. If we do it earlier, it'll be less expensive, and if we do it later, it's going to be more expensive. I'd like it to be earlier, and so I hope that you'll watch this documentary, as I will, and I hope I'll learn something from it. I should emphasize, I don't want a dark city. I want light where it is needed, on the street, on the sidewalk, but not in the sky, and not in my house, not in my bedroom, especially when it's paid for by taxpayers. So just so you know where I'm coming from, I want cheaper, functional, beautiful lighting, which is achieved by downward directed, full cutoff streetlights. And we're going to get there someday. So again, I invite you to watch the documentary. Hope you do.
Thank you, Pam. Anybody else? Okay.
Ray Koenig, 7 Meadowbrook Circle in Littleton. I just drove up from South Fork, Colorado, and got a phone message. You're going to have a resolution tonight. I can't comment on it because I have no idea what it says, but I hope I'll be happy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Anybody else? Okay. Okay.
He was a more effective council person, however.
That's good. So that takes us into our agenda, item 7A. City Attorney?
This is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Littleton, Colorado, adopting naming guidelines for city-owned sites.
Okay, this is, the intent of this is naming guidelines to guide the city in the naming of city-owned sites in a fair and objective, consistent manner, and aid in the selection of suitable names.
I want to pull that.
Peggy wants to pull that, so that one's pulled. 7B, Kirsten?
This is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Littleton, Colorado, approving the intergovernmental agreement with Arapahoe County relating to the Community Development Block Grant and Home Investment Partnership Programs.
Okay, this is U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development making funds available for specific community development projects through their CDBG program. Since 1992, the city has received or passed through over $3.7 million in funding. The city's responsible for the administration, accounting, and use of all the allocated program funds except for the transfer funding, and the county is ultimately responsible for compliance with HUD guidelines. Okay, 7C. 7C is the applicant, Anthem Littleton Management LLC, is proposing to redevelop a little over 3-acre site located on 6767 South Broadway. And in advance of the redevelopment, a minor subdivision plat and a final site development plan must be approved and recorded. The existing building on the property will be demolished prior to redevelopment. In 74, the property was developed as a multi-unit commercial medical office clinic and the development occurred prior to the platting requirement, therefore the property remains unplatted. And then in September of 2008, the council approved a rezone from transitional to R2, which is a residential single-family, to a PDR. It was transitional and residential. We changed it to a PDR, planned development residential. Right? Yeah. The platting process, subdividing, is used to establish the location of lots, easements, and street alignments. Additionally, technical issues such as drainage, grading, utilities, and street improvements are also contemplated. You want to pull it?
Pull that.
Bruce is pulling that one. 7D, City Attorney.
This is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Littleton, Colorado, authorizing the approval of the 2012 Arapahoe County Community Development Block Grant Program subgrantee agreement for the North Neighborhood Sidewalks Project.
Okay, Council, this is basically a policy question as to whether or not we want to accept the grant funds to be used on vehicular, bike, and ped safety accessibility improvement opportunities. This is one of our objectives that we have listed. The 2012 budget includes $150,000 for CDBG grants. This grant totals $127,500, so no additional appropriations would be required. Okay, need a motion?
Madam Chairman, I move that we approve consent agenda items 7B and 7D.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve 7B and D. Everybody vote.
The motion is unanimous.
Okay. Councilmember Cole?
Can I ask if we can have just some discussion of 7A before anybody makes motion? Or do we have to have everything? I thought our rules allow us to do that.
We have
is there-
guidelines, but it's better if you make a motion first and then discuss it. But you can be flexible.
Would you be willing to make a motion to discuss?
Just to make a motion to pass, to approve it?
What items did you, well, let's,
Or
go
to-
ahead,
Or
let's
to make a motion to discuss?
make a motion and then we can discuss the motion.
Okay, so I move that we approve 7A.
I'll second.
Okay? We have a motion and a second. Discussion?
So, and I'd like discussion, not just statements. So I want to raise some of my concerns and let people bounce back some thoughts. I'm concerned about limiting this in one part, and I printed this out because it was easier for me to do this and to try to type notes on this thing as long as my notes needed to be. So I'm looking at the criteria, and in the second paragraph of the criteria, it says, as an alternative, the council may consider honoring individuals whose achievements represent, et cetera, et cetera. I would like us to consider not just recognizing individuals, but potentially also groups, because occasionally groups have been recognized. We have a rose garden dedicated to World War I people. We have a World War II area with a memorial there. So I'd like to keep this as broad as we might in the wording. So that's in that section. I'd also like us to consider not just I'd like us to consider individuals whose achievements are lasting, possibly to consider, to leave it open to consider, individuals whose achievements represent a lasting legacy, possibly not just to the city of Littleton, but perhaps to the state or to the country. It's not too likely we'll have a president from Littleton, president of the United States from Littleton. Maybe a little more likely we'll have a governor sometime from Littleton. But right now, the way this is phrased is focusing on a legacy more just to the city of Littleton. So I'd like to keep this more open in that. Then
Peggy, can you point out where that is in the document?
In the second paragraph of the criteria, where it talks about whose achievements represent a lasting legacy to the mission of the city of Littleton and the community it serves. It's more focused on Littleton, does not, in my mind, really invite or, anyway, doesn't really invite larger representation. And we have, as you know, we honored someone, the first person who died from Littleton area in the Iraq conflict. We recommended honoring that person with the road naming and so forth. So I'm wanting us to be able to keep this open for anybody who might see this document and want to recommend such a name or whatever. Then in the section on sites, and I'm on what is the bottom of page 1, with the individual must be deceased for 5 years, I have a concern of saying somebody has to be dead for 5 years. Maybe they've already lived to be 90 or 95. Maybe they're still alive. I'd like to, if we have somebody who really deserves to be honored when we have something to be named, if it's relevant to that naming, I'd like to be able potentially to honor them while they're still alive by naming something. At the very least, I would not want to extend the time limit to be dead more than a year. Then on page 2, in site naming public hearing process, I would like us to follow the procedure we've established in a couple of other things in our current operating procedures, that ad hoc committee or other committees, but anyway, ad hoc committee, the members be nominated by the mayor and ratified by the entire council. I think that gives greater statement to the process. And in the second paragraph, I'd like to designate a length of time for public comment period, a minimum length of time, and I'm suggesting 80 or 90 days minimum. That way we would be able to announce that in the Littleton report, which goes out to all residences, so people would know and be able to comment or to suggest names. And I have some tweaking at places, but let me see if I have another major thing.
Peggy, can you go back to that point and
Yes.
give me a specific place in that paragraph?
Specific what?
What you just had discussed, where is that pointed out in the paragraph?
In second paragraph, a name for the new site will be proposed to the City Council at a regular council meeting. This meeting will initiate a public comment period, etc. I'd like to have a longer public comment period, in part because I'm recommending the other changes, maybe, as I said, to not wait until somebody's dead. So the longer public comment period would, I would hope, flesh out any things that we might not want to, the council might not want to award and name something after, the way we had with the mess with former Sheriff Sullivan. So having adequate public notice for people, I think, would bring all that out and not have to wait 5 years to find out anything that is embarrassing or disgraceful. And I have some minor things, but those are probably the larger issues, and I can make motions on some tweaking otherwise. But I'd like to hear people's thoughts on those.
Bruce?
I have a couple thoughts. First of all, I'm reading that these are guidelines, and the council will be the council on each individual circumstance will be the one that votes to approve it. I think any of the issues that Peggy might have might be for a future council to consider, which would be a little bit of a variance from a guideline rather than trying to memorialize those into this. Because the second part of my comment is I'd really like to respect the museum board who took the time to find 8 different circumstances out there, hashed them around, boiled them down, got to where they got to, submitted it for staff review, and then submitted it for attorney review. I think you have a document here that fits, the 90% case, and then the fact that it's a guideline will fit the other 10% exceptions.
Thank you. Bruce? Bruce and then Jim.
I respect what Councilmember Beckman said about the museum board. Whenever we ask the boards or commissions to do this kind of work, it's, I think certainly the value here in terms of what they've given us is quite high, in my opinion. That having been said, I do kind of like the idea of extending achievement representation beyond just the city. I mean, we've got precedents with that, with the Danny Dietz Memorial, certainly from Afghanistan, and rightfully so, obviously. But I think putting state and nation in here certainly does not. It enhances the quality, I think, or the sense of the guideline in terms of what we're trying to do. I actually had somewhat of a similar thought in terms of the issue regarding someone being deceased for a minimum of five years. Difference of opinion, maybe, and it's just style points. I kind of probably would certainly be oversensitive to things like the Pat Sullivan situation, but I think 12 months after somebody's deceased might, from a guideline perspective, be a little bit more latitude, might provide a little more latitude in terms of what a council might be willing to consider. And I didn't have, a major problem with some of the other things. I mean, Peggy, the issue of having a mayor recommend and then council approve, I think is generally, that's fine, and wouldn't have major concerns about that. So,
Jim?
Well, I think Peggy brought up some very good points, and I certainly would support the ability to honor groups as opposed to just individuals. And frankly, I think we've got precedent set in the past of honoring individuals for achievements within the city. We've got a number of green spaces that were named by people who were alive. And I think that Peggy is correct in that, why don't you honor them while they're alive? Why do you want to present them with a plaque 5 years after they're dead? Because it doesn't do them any good. So I think that removing anything at all about having to be deceased in order to receive an honor, I would like to see that part removed. There is other methods by which you can remove a name if you honor somebody and then after a few years or a few months they fall out of grace. There's ways in which you can remove that name. That's provided for in this document. Having a larger comment period, that's probably not a critical issue, but it's also an important issue in that if there are people who are coming forth, maybe 2 weeks is not long enough. It may need to be 30 days or something like that. The mayor recommending to council for approval, I think is probably just a good operating procedure for us to be under. So there are 4 amendments that I think that I would certainly support being made, and I'll let Peggy take the lead, or I can do it either one. But
You can take the lead, that's fine. You speak more loudly.
Jim?
Okay.
Are there any other comments? Okay, Jim. Jerry, sorry. Hold on.
Yeah,
Yep, go ahead.
Cool. Yeah, I think the groups would be a good one to add in, and I think reducing the 5 down to 1, I think that's what Mr. Stallman suggested. When I first was reading this, I was concerned that it was just going to be all about public officials, elected officials, how they get named, how they have things named after them. So I was happy to see that they did put in individuals. I'd like to see more emphasis in individuals, if anything. I think the groups is an excellent one to add in there. For the most part, I don't have an issue with this, other than I think I would definitely support adding the groups and perhaps reducing the 5 years. I would like to leave it in there, but I would like, I think, down to 1, I think would be reasonable. That's my comments.
Okay, Jim?
Well, I want to address Jerry for just a moment, then I'll start making some amendments.
Okay.
As you know, I've had a park named after me, a tremendous honor, while I'm alive, and I can enjoy it. I can go sit in the green grass, and I can sit under the shelter, and I can enjoy that park. So that's the type of thing I'm looking for. I'm not looking for something after I'm dead that to name a park after me. That doesn't do me any good. It may satisfy my family, but my family doesn't live around here. So therefore, they're not getting any benefit from that. Having it happen while you're alive is the biggest honor you can have. And so I will make some amendments. We can vote how we want to. The first amendment I would make is on page 1 of the City of Littleton naming guidelines under criteria, to include groups in there as well as individuals. And I'm not going to give specific language because it's several points it probably needs to be covered.
Okay, we need.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to include groups along with individuals under criteria. Any discussion? Okay, ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion is unanimous.
And can I ask a question for clarification? If we, having done that, there's several places then the document would have to get
Yeah, and that's what
brought in
Councilman Taylor was,
conformance, right?
yeah, we'll
So,
make that
okay.
change.
Staff will handle
And
that.
Mayor, based upon the conversation, and I said this a little too late when we were going through the downtown comp plan, but if there's not opposition, rather than doing individual motions for these, maybe you can list out, unless you wanted to do individual motions, but I've
I
got
think we
5
should
for-
do them as individual motions because doing them as a block,
Not that many.
Okay.
there may be some that people want and don't want.
Amendment number 2 is also on page 1, on the bottom of the page under sites. And the last line down there, I would like that to read, the following criteria must be met. Replace that entire last line with the following criteria must be met.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay.
So just for a second, the part that says one of the following criteria, do you want all of the following criteria or one of the following?
1, I'm sorry.
Okay. The motion is to essentially remove the phraseology, the individual must be deceased for a minimum of 5 years.
Correct. That's the basis of it.
Okay. So, and we have a motion and a second on that. Is there any discussion? Okay, ready to vote?
The vote is 4 in favor with Mayor Brinkman, Councilmember Valdez, and Councilmember Cernanek voting no. The motion carries 4-3.
The next motion will be on page 2. Sometimes I had to find where it has to do with the mayor in the first paragraph under site naming public hearing process in the last line, appointed by the mayor to recommend a name for that site. I'd just like to add in there, appointed by the mayor, confirmed by the council.
Do we have a second?
That's the first paragraph?
Yes,
And
under
bottom
site
line of the
naming.
First paragraph.
Yep. So the sentence would read, council may choose to designate an appropriate committee or convene an ad hoc naming committee appointed by the mayor, ratified by the council to recommend a name for that site. And do we have a second?
It's Phil.
Phil? Any discussion? Ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion's unanimous.
And in the second paragraph under site naming process, the public comment period, somewhere in there I'd like to have it at least a minimum of 30 days. I don't know where it should go. And Kirsten is going to comment.
Are you looking for a legal opinion?
Not necessarily.
Okay. Well, we'll discuss that, I guess.
The second paragraph, second sentence, this meeting will initiate a public comment period, and at some point in there, insert to
A minimum.
a
of
minimum of 30 days.
Yeah, we can.
Okay.
We can insert it in there.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
You want
Yes. Now I'm going to ask Kirsten, what's the legal problem?
Okay.
I don't think there is in this situation, since you would be doing it by resolution. I think it was just something that we mirrored off another policy and thought it seemed reasonable.
Bruce?
You're saying a minimum of 30 days. Why don't we just pick, I mean, it's open-ended. Why don't we just pick a number of days?
Simply because the way our council meetings fall, like right now in the summertime, we're meeting once a month. Sometimes we meet twice a month.
Okay.
I'd rather have a minimum rather than a maximum
Okay.
for that reason.
Okay.
Okay, any other discussion? Ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion's unanimous.
Okay, and we have a main motion on the floor, which is to approve the naming, the City of Littleton naming guidelines as proposed with the amendments. Discussion, Bruce.
Ask one question, which I neglected to ask when we were having the original discussion. On page 4 at the top, it talks about City Council may wish to recommend a name for a site not under City of Littleton jurisdiction. And an example of that might be what? Is this like the Dietz Memorial Highway?
Or you want to make it the Bruce Stallman sewer plant.
Catchy.
Tim, do you mind coming down and giving us the committee's thought on that?
Good evening, Mayor Brinkman, Council. Tim Nims, Museum and Library Director. The thought on that was if you had an entity like South Suburban, a few years ago, we had suggested to South Suburban that they change the name of the golf course. So that was the example that the museum board was looking at in that instance.
But that's technically it's within the city limits. It's under an IGA for them to operate, but that wouldn't necessarily be outside our jurisdiction.
No, not necessarily. I guess it was more of a split jurisdiction, probably. But that was the example that came to mind with the museum board. As the city attorney mentioned, this was modeled on a policy that we took out of the city of Eugene, Oregon, and they had a very similar language in that. Okay, I was mainly just curious. I don't have serious heartburn. I just was trying to figure out what the application of it might look like.
Well, we do.
That was the thought process.
Yeah, we do have some split ownership locations where some of it is owned by South Suburban. Also, as you look at something like Oxbow, a piece of it is owned by South Suburban, and a piece of it is owned by Englewood, I think.
I think that's Murray.
Okay, that's fair.
Peggy?
Since we've eliminated the need to be dead, I guess this is just a cleanup. There are a couple of places where it refers to date of death we would need to put in if applicable.
Staff will take care of that.
Yeah, they'll figure it out.
And then let me see. I think I had one more. No, I do, so just a second. Oh, on bottom of page 2, so I need a little help to see if other people think there's an issue here. Next to the last paragraph, if public response suggests the need for an alternate name, the naming committee will reconsider other names, etc. And I'm wondering if the process gets to a point where the proposed name doesn't look like it's being well received by the community, whether the process should start over and have a public comment period, similar public comment period. So I need maybe either legal view or council view on that one.
I mean, I think it's a policy issue if you want to go back and have more of a comment period, but these are guidelines, and so they allow a great amount of flexibility. So you could do that, you can make that decision at the time if you run into that problem.
Okay, if that's adequate. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, everybody understand the motion? Ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries.
And Madam Mayor, if I could say, I'm liaison to the library board, so I was there for their first and second drafts and discussions.
Museum
They
board.
did the museum board. They did an incredible job, as you all know. They did tremendous research and discussion. So
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate that.
Bruce?
City Manager Penny's back in the room, which is good. So while you're walking down, the front end of the, let me go find the note here. Wait 1 second. So the staff agenda communication here, in the background references the fact that in February, the issue of naming at least some of the museum building for Bob McQuarrie came up. Where does that reside at this juncture?
On the shelf, waiting adoption of these guidelines.
Okay. So having now gone through the consent agenda approval, what's the next step on that one?
Well, you can, using your process, we can put it on the agenda for discussion, start the public comment period.
Okay.
And move
We need a
forward,
motion to
so-
do that?
No.
No.
Okay.
No, we would just put it on for the next.
I'd like to see that happen personally. We have
And
others.
I had thought, maybe I'm misremembering, and Michael, I thought maybe it was raised when you came to the museum board meeting. I had thought they had raised some, they had talked about possibilities of naming part of a facility for him. So if that was what they were thinking, I don't know where that plays into the information change.
Yeah, we would certainly run this through them again for that, because I think that conversation occurred before the conversation on the naming policy. So we'd route it fully through, but we can get it moving again if that's council's desire.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else? Okay, Councilmember Stallman.
Yeah, and 7C on this Highline Place minor subdivision plat, I think I had 4 or 5 quick questions. And
Glenn?
Oops.
Let's just get Glenn down.
Yeah, no, that's perfect.
Certainly, he could probably answer
Yeah,
that.
no, that's great. And I guess given a consent, well, I'll go ahead and do it. I guess I hadn't seen, and this may just be me, but and I understand in here you guys reference the code sections and stuff, but a minor subdivision plat, we've done a few of these previously. You may not have, but somebody's done them around here. So what would be another example of where we've done one of these?
A minor subdivision plat, I believe the CarMax would be an example, and a minor would be less than 10 lots. It has public street frontage.
That did go to Planning Commission, though, because
they were asking for a waiver.
Okay.
And that's why, I'm sorry, because of the waiver, that required a major subdivision plat that then required Planning Commission and City Council.
sidewalk issue.
So we don't generally do minor subdivision plats, or do we?
I think, I'm not sure what other examples are. I'm sure there's plenty.
Yeah, Jerry, you'd probably know.
Can you give me an example? 7-Eleven, I'm told, on Mineral, behind the light rail station, was a minor subdivision plat.
Okay. Okay, all right, good, all right.
See more.
No, that's fine. I was just, it was more of, I suppose, just used to the normal big process as opposed to this, so this actually isn't bad at all. We've got, are you guys satisfied at the staff level on this thing? One of the concerns when you've got folks in a facility like this traditionally has been people exiting the facility and wandering around the neighborhoods unattended, and I've got some family experience with that. It's not pleasant when that sort of stuff happens. I mean, you're pretty comfortable with the plans that have been developed that that's not going to happen in these neighborhoods?
Yeah, and that is a principal concern of the proprietors as well. In fact, the other process that's going on is the site development process and the building plan review. We're spending a good deal of time in the architectural plan review over a system because you got to allow people out in a fire, but at the same time it has to be monitored because of the population that's in there. So yes, there are some systems that are available that do both, and that will be in place.
Okay. It's said in here on page 2, the city of Centennial concerns have been addressed, so I guess by virtue of the fact that Centennial is sort of across the street with that Highline Meadows subdivision, what were their concerns?
I believe those concerns probably came up in the rezoning process. I don't know if there was anything that would have come up with the subdivision plat, but we've gone through a couple reiterations of the plan development case, started in 2008. I don't know, do we actually? I'm not sure what the city of Centennial, would you come up here, please? Somebody. I think they're just upset it's not in their community, but I don't know that for a fact.
Ernie actually processed this case, so he's looking for the letter, but he's apparently had something to do with the access on Broadway.
Had to do what?
Had to do with the access on Broadway, the existing access.
The fact that it's planned for a right-in, right-out,
Correct.
and there's no light or anything.
There's
that's
no
gonna
light
miss
there.
Okay, and I guess our engineering of that particular access point, given proximity to Arapahoe Road, how are you going to handle that?
Well, the access point's been there for some time, and since it was an office building, so it's been in place. It's not a new access point, and I don't believe traffic has looked at it, and they don't feel that's an issue.
All right, I was trying to find the map, but are they going to just, so they're basically just going to leave it as opposed to, they're not going to enhance it or make it wider or?
They are enhancing it. They are providing ramps. I don't believe there's ADA ramps at the sidewalk. They're also widening the sidewalk on Broadway Road.
I was thinking more about they're not going to cut it in so that traffic can get out of the flow to turn right?
Oh, like a decel lane?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, is that something they should do?
I don't believe so. I think there's room.
Not
Charlie
for no more
Boston
traffic
would give you an
than they
answer.
would have.
When we were looking at the rezone on this, this is one of the issues that came up regarding the traffic flow, and it was so minimal because the residents don't come and go, and they had numbers based on visits from family and stuff like that.
That's correct, Mayor. The traffic volume is very low. A decel lane coming from the north is very difficult because you'd have to widen the bridge at the Highline Canal. And as a result, a full decel lane would not be allowed or not be able to be constructed. If you're going on an axle lane going to the south, if you're making a right turn out and you want to go south on Broadway, the axle lane already exists.
Okay.
There is one there. There's no doubt that this access on the Broadway, at certain times of the day, it's impossible to make a left turn on the Broadway. Virtually impossible.
Well, you're not going to, it's right in, right out, so you're not going to allow them to turn left.
No, at the moment, it is a full movement access.
Okay,
We have discussed with the developer months ago that at some point it may be restricted to right in, right out, but we'd have to do that with signage or raised median. I can tell you again, for a good part of the day, you can't make a left turn out of that development, but you can make a left turn into it fairly easily. You're only looking for traffic coming from the north. So a left turn into the project is feasible. A left turn out, where you have to coordinate with both south and northbound traffic, realizing there's a traffic light, a block in each direction, it's going to be very difficult.
Okay. Last question I have, and I'm going to just speculate the gentleman behind you has some orientation with this because you're scribbling madly. So I don't want this question to be misconstrued, but as a general question, I see you've got the applicant's name, address, so forth and so on, and it's from a community in Oregon. And given the magnitude of the public, not just the capital investment involved in the project, but then you've got a chunk of money on the engineering, public improvements, and so forth and so on, which I assume the applicant is paying for. What exactly is the process that we're going through to make sure there's, quote unquote, sufficient capital resources to conclude the project in a successful fashion?
Well, our principal concern are those public improvements that's listed in your SIA, and they will have to bond for that amount. So we're assured that the public improvements will be completed.
Okay. 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 All right. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Jerry and then Bruce.
The developer is Anthem Littleton Management, LLC, out of Oregon. And then the owner is Broadway Real Estate Investment Group. Is there any documentation that says Broadway Real Estate Investment Group is in favor of this?
Is it what? I'm sorry?
Favor of this, or is this just a developer coming forward?
I believe the LLC was just developed to develop this project here in Littleton. But it's an Oregon corporation, Anthem Memory Care.
I guess my point is I don't see anything in the documentation that you've given us that says the owner is in support of this.
I'm sure the owner is in support of it. I believe they're one and the same.
But this went to the Planning Commission, right?
No.
This does not go to Planning Commission.
So then there should be documentation. I know in the Planning Commission, they get documentation that says a letter or something, a statement from the owner saying, yes, they are in support of this.
Right. Well, ultimately, the plat would be signed by the owner. So the plat that you're approving tonight, the minor subdivision plat, would be signed by the owner as well as staff and the mayor, and then that gets recorded. So if the owner is in favor, he would not sign.
And if the owner is not in favor of it, we're just wasting our time. So shouldn't we know that up front?
I can assure you the owner is in favor of it, and perhaps Mr. Chaffee with the contract.
But I don't have anything from the owner that tells me that they're in favor of it.
Maybe we do.
It says the owner here is a Broadway Real Estate.
What says who they are? It just doesn't say that they're in.
It does say they're the owner.
We do have the letter of consent signed by
That's
the
what
owner.
I'm looking for.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll have it shortly.
I appreciate it.
Okay, Bruce?
I just want to reflect again on what Councilman Stallman said in the design of this thing. Alzheimer's patients do walk away and they travel long distances, and I've been part of several searches for that, and some have ended tragically. And in 2004, the Sheriff's Department became part of a Colorado group of people who adopted Colorado Life Track. Colorado Life Track's available to any citizen out there in the community who has a relative with an Alzheimer's issue. It looks like a wristwatch, and it allows, if they are missing, for that to be activated and then located before any tragedy occurs. I would hope that this company is considering the second and third level of these kinds of things that have to be done if we're going to be properly caring for Alzheimer's patients in Littleton. And so I know maybe you can't address that. I saw a lot of architectural issues, but that's people still walk away.
We could get a more detailed report from the operator and send it to council. As far as I know, there's others. As far as access of the site, we worked on fencing to control access into the park. I know they're selling it on a supervised facility, so I'm sure they've got a few redundant systems in place. But if you're interested, we can give you a better report.
And if this raises an interest in Alzheimer's disease issues in the community, this Colorado Life Track information is available at the Sheriff's Department. We participate in it, but they're the ones that manage it, and it is definitely a lifesaver.
Okay, we'll pass that on. That's great.
Bruce? Phil?
Go ahead, Phil.
Glenn, I'm presuming that there's also going to be some sort of licensing of this facility beyond the building of it, or at least some oversight by some healthcare licensing organization to be involved in that. Can you maybe take us through, if we proceed with the approving the final subdivision plat, what's the rest of the process before they're actually operational?
Well, for us, it would be doing the final details on the site development plan, and that would include the working drawings, the construction drawings, issuing the permit, supervising the construction all the way to giving certificate of occupancy. As far as I'm sure there's licensing by the state, but I couldn't tell you what that process is.
Now, the final site plan, is that something that goes before the Planning Commission?
No, that's a staff function.
Okay.
Bruce?
Glenn, if this were a regular major plat, you'd have, and I know in this particular location there have been periodically, or in the past, there's been a sign up for public notice that this thing was being considered for, I don't know, either rezone or development or some such thing. Has there been communication with the neighbors, just out of curiosity?
Yes, there has. And there were a number of conditions from the neighborhood that was on the plan development. One being access through this site to the property to the north, and they provided that. You might be able to see that on the plat. Also building a sidewalk on the west end of the site so that the folks from the neighborhood can access the park directly through their site.
I saw that.
And they're building that and maintaining it. So they have been in contact with those owners that have those specific conditions.
Broadly speaking, with the physical side of the thing you're describing, they're making accommodations, but in a general sense, the neighborhood's aware of the development and has visibility to the nature of the project.
Right, right. Just from another standpoint, the actual height of the building has come down from what was originally approved. It was a 2-story facility. They brought it down to a 1-story.
Okay.
So it'll fit in with the neighborhood, I think, rather well.
Okay, good. Thank you.
I just, for future, all the questions you're asking are really relevant to the public, and I understand the questions. But as far as criteria, this doesn't leave you with criteria to apply and a whole lot of discretion. It's more of one of those ministerial type of acts. So just so that council's aware, but I understand the questions that you want the public to be aware of.
Mm-hmm.
Jerry?
I'm not sure how to take that, Madam Attorney. Does this letter meet the criteria for what I was asking for? The letter that they have on the screen for us?
Who's it signed by? Were you concerned about
owner.
one of the business entities that's not? I mean, I think staff has to answer that question. I don't know. Does it mean, is it the owner that he's asking about?
I don't see the header of the paper, so I don't know.
I'm sorry.
It's a Broadway Real Estate, and it's signed by the Vice
There
President?
you go. Yeah, that's what I was looking for.
Okay.
Sorry
And
about
I'm not an attorney, and I can be good. What would you say, Madam Attorney?
I think it looks good.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Bruce?
Just to address that issue, there was no comment made in the council communication that this project was in any way looked at by the police department. So my question is one that I think anyone from management would have asked, and it wasn't addressed.
Well, the Army looked at it.
As a matter of our process, I mean, through the zoning and through our various staff meetings, we do send copies to police department and fire and get everybody's input.
But it doesn't say that.
Okay.
And it does list city traffic engineer, city landscape architect, and in the fire department. So an issue of public safety needs to go to the police department.
Glenn, just to kind of circle back on this was zoned in 2008. Should it have been platted prior to the rezone?
No.
Okay.
Typically, you do that before you pull a permit. In fact, it's
Okay.
required by our code, but there wouldn't be a reason to do it earlier.
So the platting took 4 years because?
Well, it was really, this is when they brought it forward. They ran into various financial issues, economy kind of tanked there, so there really wasn't any activity for a number of years. It was just till recently they got their financing.
Is this the same group that applied for the rezone? Or is this a different entity?
That did the rezoning?
It's a different group?
It's a different
Okay. Okay, that's right. Was the original? Okay. Right. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Need a motion?
I move that the final subdivision plat and subdividers improvement agreement for Highline Place final subdivision plat be approved, and that the council president be authorized to affix her signature to the plat and agreement.
Second.
Good. Ready to vote?
I'm sorry, who seconded?
Jerry.
The vote is
Oh.
unanimous. The motion carries.
Thank you. Okay. 8A. Kirsten?
This is an ordinance of the City of Littleton, Colorado, amending Title 10, Chapters 1, 2, and 9 to eliminate the Transit Impact Overlay Zone and amending the process for approval of a planned development overlay.
Okay. This is a second reading and a public hearing. So, Glenn, if you don't mind doing a brief presentation?
Yes.
Excuse me, Mayor, could you please turn off the votes?
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Mayor and Council, to reiterate our presentation back on June 5, as we pointed out, the Transit Impact Zone was created as really a protection for the areas around the transit stations that were implemented in 2000. We've had 12 years, and actually it was a good tool because we didn't, over the last 12 years, we have developed protections of primarily our downtown. And if you read the original ordinance, the concern was protecting the character and the historic resources in downtown Littleton. Since then, we've developed the HP code, we have the Main Street Historic District, we have downtown design guidelines, and what I pointed out at the mineral station, the actual ordinance says if there's a planned development in the area, it doesn't apply, and that whole area around the mineral station is planned development. So we are recommending that this ordinance be approved. You have a unanimous recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission, and with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Council, any questions? Okay, seeing that. Bruce? Dang.
Yeah.
Yes, Bruce has a
I
question.
do have a question. I think you may have answered this on the first reading, but it's been so long ago, I'm going to ask it again. It all sounds good, but in the abstract, what can you guys envision going wrong with eliminating this thing? Just to sort of say we at least asked the question when somebody says, well, how could you be so ludicrous? You know, what is it we don't know that we don't know in the vernacular?
You know, and I've thought this through. I mean, the worst case would be not in the downtown area, because we do have design guidelines that really address the football area, and we have the Main Street District. But the circle doesn't follow geographic areas, so it does go west of the railroad depression. So perhaps there could be...
East. Goes east.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay.
East. So potentially there could be properties there. You have existing zoning. You have one historic district. So again, that area is protected by the design guidelines in HPB. But perhaps there would be a development on Littleton Boulevard. I can't think what the example would be and what the PDO would give you. What this would force is another look at it by the Planning Commission. I would say that with the ordinance and the fact that there was really very little criteria as far as what the Planning Commission could look at and give a good reason to deny or approve a case, I don't think it was much of a tool. But I guess that would be the risk, that you would see something outside of the downtown area that had current zoning, and perhaps you weren't happy with that current underlying zoning. If that was the case, we probably should change whatever that underlying zoning is along Littleton Boulevard. That's
the example would be the property in which the Sternberg building is, which would allow a 40-story tower. If we considered that out of character, it's actually zoned to permit that, and that would be the example.
But the TIS theoretically would give you a second bite at the apple.
Right.
Yeah.
correct.
So, to give you a specific.
Yeah, no, that's good. I appreciate that. I mean, so really the sheriff's building comes back around, but that's, I guess technically that might be list of merit. It's not historically designated, is it?
No.
The sheriff's building? Okay.
Is it in the TIS?
Yeah, it's in the TIS.
Would be in the TIS.
Right.
Is there any way to get rid of the TIS west of the railroad depression, hypothetically?
Sure, we can vote on it.
And leave it on the east side? I mean,
I don't see why not.
I don't know if that makes sense or not. I don't know if that's come up in conversations. Okay.
Kind of segregating out.
Doesn't make sense. Okay.
Jim?
No,
Okay, I understand. Jerry?
I have no problem seeing this being removed. I think we've had it now for a while, and I'm not even sure we've ever used it, but it has slowed the process down substantially. I think the last time you told us, was it 5 weeks or more that it slowed the process down?
It's an additional public hearing, so that would easily be 5 weeks.
Yeah, I think that's what you had mentioned last time, so I have no problem removing this thing.
Any other questions for staff, council?
I do have a procedural question. If
Okay.
there's a major grammatical error, can I just take care of that separate?
Yes.
Or you, okay.
Thank you. Okay, this is a public hearing. I will open the hearing. I do have a roster with names. I will read the name, and if you are interested in speaking on this particular subject, please come down, state your name and address. Cal Murab, Pam Chaborn,
My name is Pam Chadbourne. I live at 5402 South Nevada Street, which is in the north corner of the downtown football. My interest in this is that I live downtown. I want development downtown, but I want development that's going to make us all prosperous, all of us, not just the developers. I want a town that's going to be livable during the transition into a higher density downtown, as well as a flexible community that can continue to adapt in the future. So I want it to be prosperous, livable, very appealing and attractive. I don't think repealing the TIS is going to help us accomplish that. The TIS is a planning tool. The TIS is also a method by which we get extra public comment. In fact, one of the replies is it slowed us down because there's an extra public hearing. Excuse me, but when I hear that you want to go fast because you want to eliminate a public hearing, I need to ask you to reconsider, and that's what I'm doing. So let me bumble through a few points. The threat of redevelopment has not occurred partly because for half of this time we've had a economic recession that's impacted real estate really badly. We haven't had a community development director for a couple of years. I think our director before that was a little demoralized. So now we have a new one. So part of that period we haven't been reaching out. Now we are. And so we actually need the TIS now for what you guys are doing now. We also didn't have a downtown development plan or a comprehensive plan for the last 30 years. So if you're a developer, you don't know what Littleton's going to do to you. We really need those plans in place to guide developers to come here and do what they're going to do, to attract the right ones. So I disagree with the statement that we have tools to protect downtown. Yeah, Main Street may be protected, but I have to point at Prince Street Commons and Nevada Place as examples of buildings that do not fit downtown and do not fit a historic atmosphere. That's not just my opinion. I've talked to a lot of people. I don't know how they happened, but they did. And we actually need more protections for those of us who live there. That's what I've heard from the people who live there, not less. If this is redundant around Mineral, repeal it around Mineral. Don't repeal it around downtown. So if the downtown plan has a goal to simplify and coordinate development processes, do that as long as you maintain public visibility. I think a thing that appalls me again about this is that you haven't replaced the omission of the intention to get rid of DRC with other technical reviews, or the intention to get rid of this extra public hearing with other opportunities for the public to be informed, educated, and to comment. And the appeal process for the Planning Commission is where we hear about these things and we have a chance to comment. And to appeal that undermines our ability to do that even further. So let me say that point doesn't fly for me either. The intention to get rid of DRC, there's strong technical reasons to keep form, fit, and function review. If DRC is broken, fix DRC, don't get rid of it. And let me mention, it centralizes power in the council. The great thing about the United States is citizens are sovereign, we delegate authority. We separate powers and we have checks and balances on powers, and to centralize power in the council to me is dangerous. Potentially, let me say, I actually want to trust you guys, and I'm always in admiration by what you say and ask, and often by what you do. So it's not that I don't trust you or don't like you. It's that the centralization of power is dangerous, and Americans know that. So let me summarize by saying I like the technical review by something like the DRC. I don't want you to get rid of it. I want you to fix it. I like the TIZ. It makes a lot of sense to me. I live downtown, and we're going to develop downtown. It can be bad or it can be good. I think the TIZ identifies one of the drivers for development in downtown. Is clearly compelling, and it's a good reason to add extra steps for development downtown. So it shouldn't be taken away. It should be strengthened, if anything. So I'd like you to vote against this, or I'd like you to table it. And I'd like you to examine further consequences of getting rid of this. I don't think you've really told us, citizens, what we're losing by this. I believe that we are losing. And so that's my request and recommendation. Thanks.
Thank you, Pam. The next name on the list is Tom Gruszka.
Good evening, Council. My name is Tom Gruszka. I reside at the southwest corner of Mineral and South Park Lane in the Pinnacle at Highline condominiums. I am a candidate for the RTD Board of Directors. In fact, today I just received notice from the Secretary of State of sufficiency, so I am certified for the November ballot for the RTD election. And the reason I'm here tonight is because the transit impact zone around the light rail stations affects our mutual constituents. And a huge part of my platform is transparency and openness in government. I do support, as a small business owner who serves small businesses, I do support small businesses, both the ones who call Littleton their home and the ones who would like to call Littleton their home. I am very much in favor of streamlining the process for development. However, I also want to make sure that the public has an adequate opportunity to give input, and that means all of our constituents, including the businesses, the residents, the taxpayers, and visitors to our community who ride RTD. And I don't know a whole lot about this initiative. I just recently found out about it, and I'm trying to learn as much as I can. And therefore, I do have a couple of questions. And one is, what public feedback, what feedback on this proposal has been received thus far?
The public feedback?
Yes.
This public hearing is the opportunity for that. We had a first reading public hearing in there. I don't believe anybody spoke.
Okay.
And yeah, we received no comments via submitted or, and I don't know, council, have you had any individual contact with anyone regarding this? No.
Okay, and my second question is, what analyses have been done to look at all the potential implications that this could have for our community, this proposal?
I think Glenn can answer that. Glenn, do you want to address that?
We did. We went through, and really what I'm sorry, I'm getting all the acronyms mixed up, but the TIS just requires that any development, redevelopment in that half-mile circle goes through another public hearing. It goes to the Planning Commission. There is a zoning in place right now that controls what ultimately can be developed. And again, we do have some controls on the historic area, which I think was really the intent of the original TIS. So I think we do have the tools in place to protect the downtown, which was the intent. So that's what we've done as far as evaluating the impacts, Mayor.
Thank you. Tom?
It does seem to me that maybe some of the layers of transparency might be reduced by this proposal, and I'm just wanting to ask you as a constituent and as a candidate who's concerned about our mutual constituents that if you would please consider implementing maybe a replacement process for public review. And that's what I wanted to ask. So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Tom. Okay, anybody else? Jose?
My name is Jose Trujillo, Joseph, and I have my business at 2420 West Main, and my residence is at 5574 South Huron. I, for one, could never really understand the TIS as why it was put in because of the fact that it's just another layer of bureaucracy that the builder or whatever is going to do something has to go through. We haven't had anything that's been really asked to go into that because of the fact that that half mile already encompasses quite a bit of the areas that nothing can be done. Littleton Cemetery, you know, those people are there, they're permanent. They don't have any problem. But I think when you go to the east there, you have a lot of the old stock housing there, and it's a lot of the old Littleton originally. And if all of these people jump into historic preservation, you're not going to have anything to build on anyway. So I think that eliminating this TIS will actually make it a little more comfortable for people up there that did want to sell their properties and didn't have a way out, because you jump from one to another hoop and then they just give up. But I don't know exactly how much property there is within that half mile that's going to be constructible. So I'm just glad that it's up for consideration as elimination, and I am for the elimination of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jose. Anyone else? Okay, I'll close the public hearing, and I need a motion. A motion on the ordinance.
I'll move.
Go for
Jerry?
it.
Okay. I move to approve the proposed ordinance on second reading, amending Littleton City Council Code Ordinance Title 10, Chapters 1, 2, and 9 to eliminate the Transit Impact Overlay Zone and amend the process for approval of the Planned Development Overlay.
Second?
Second.
Bruce Beckman seconded. Council, discussion? Bruce?
I would like to know, and I don't think, Glenn, you can answer because it's probably history, but there might be somebody else who can. The point that was raised about Prince Street Commons, Nevada Place, and in my memory also there was a planned development that never occurred on Bemis Street, kind of close to the Rose Garden area, and those would have been all in the TIS. So I'm wondering, in my memory, I don't recall that there was a TIS hearing for any of those three, if perhaps you remember.
I think in those cases, they were rezonings anyhow. So they went through the normal process that a rezoning would go through. This would be a case, what the TIS would pick up is somebody who is not rezoning. Perhaps they're making a change to the facade of their building. Then it would require a hearing before Planning and Zoning Commission.
So if we were to use that example to 6767 South Broadway that we talked about earlier tonight, would that be an example of something, were it in the TIS area, that would have had to have a TIS hearing?
In that case, no, because it was a planned development. So anything that was a planned development was exempted, and anything that's single family is exempted from the TIS as well. So it would be a commercial, a hard zone B2 parcel where somebody is developing according to their zoning would require that extra hearing, in essence.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jerry?
As I recall, the Planning Commission put this in place. It was in reaction to light rail coming into town, and it was to help to ensure that we weren't just going to do some scrapes that were going to be out of characteristic or historic. It was really had a lot to do with historic preservation, and I think it did what it was intended to do, just to do a stop and check. Mm-hmm. I think with our well, I think Pam brought up some good stuff. It doesn't make it one less input for citizens, because there is plenty of time for citizen input. This added, I think, way too much time to an entire process for developers. I mean, developers, they want to get going, and then that's part of our issue here in city, is that we have been an unfriendly city for the process, and I think that we're trying to clean these things up. I think it's a good move to remove this. I think our Historic Preservation Board, we've had some cleanup in there that we've done to protect areas, and I am entirely in favor of removing this.
Bruce?
Yeah, I think Jerry's making a fair point. It's clearly the law of unintended consequences exists, and hence the question, what can happen if we do this that we aren't thinking or hasn't been thought through in depth. At the same point in time, and Pam, respect your points as well, but as Glenn pointed out, the residential neighborhoods are exempted from the TIS side of it as it currently exists. And more to the point, the incremental public hearing process only resides within these two very limited areas of the community. The rest of the community has the existing process where it would either go through a PDO or a zoning change or so forth and so on. So in some respects, you could make the argument that if the vast majority of the community has a public input process and, Tom, a level of transparency that everyone is comfortable with, clearly the tools at some point do appear to be in place to meet the important needs of the property owners in and around the development, the citizens and the residents, as well as the people who are risking capital to put a development in place and need to be, need to have the community's support as well. I mean, those are balanced interests, and I think collectively we all have an obligation to strike a fair balance between those two. I think this does that, and I'm in favor of it accordingly.
Any other comments, council? Okay. Ready to vote on the motion? Okay.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion is unanimous.
Okay, that concludes our business this evening, and the meeting is adjourned. And everyone have a safe 4th of July tomorrow.